Hi, my name is Damon Chetson, and I'm a criminal lawyer in Raleigh, North Carolina. I represent folks who've been charged with crimes in Wake County, Raleigh, other parts of the Research Triangle, in the state courts and the federal courts, including on charges involving serious felonies, misdemeanors, drug crimes, sex crimes, any kind of felony or misdemeanor. And I also represent folks in federal cases. I want to talk a little bit today about what you should say to a police officer if a police officer approaches you to talk to you about an investigation. And I'm going to give you some very straightforward advice. It's going to be advice that's going to be hard for you to follow, but it's advice that if you follow it, will put you in a much better position to successfully resolve your case than if you ignore my advice. And here's my advice. You should politely but firmly refuse to answer any questions presented to you by any police officer, any detective, any investigator, any person from any bureau or agency asking for information about your case or your behavior. You can do that by saying, look, Mr. Officer, look, Mrs. Officer, I appreciate the job you're doing, I respect the job you're doing, but I'm going to politely decline to speak to you without having an attorney present. And then you want to get on a phone and talk to an attorney. The reason for that is that even if you are telling the God's honest truth, that truth will lock you into a story. Let me give you an example. Let's say the police are investigating a robbery of a bank, and they think you might have had something to do with it, or you might be involved in some way. They're completely wrong about that. You're completely innocent, but they have some reason to suspect, because somebody may have seen you around the bank, to think that you may be involved. And let's say you were actually, according to your recollection, at a friend's house. And let's say the police come to you, and instead of following my advice and refusing to talk, you give a statement, and you say to the police officer, sir, I think I was over John Smith's house, and if you check with him, I think he'll tell you that. Well, the police officer is going to check, and maybe you're wrong. Maybe it's because you're confused about when the bank robbery happened. I mean, after all, you didn't rob the bank, so you're confused about that, and you're forgetful about where you were. So you give the police officer that answer, the police officer checks it out, and it turns out that you were not at John Smith's house. This is how it looks in a trial. The district attorney is going to question that police officer, and he's going to say, now officer, you asked the defendant where he was at the time of the bank robbery, didn't you? That's right, Mr. Prosecutor. And what did he tell you, Mr. Officer? And the officer's going to say, well, Mr. Prosecutor, he told me he was at John Smith's house. Well, when I checked that out, I found out that John Smith, who we have no reason to believe was involved in the bank robbery, doesn't recall him being there. So it looks like, in front of a jury, that you have just tried to deceive the police officer. There are lots of other examples of why it's not a wise idea. It is a bad idea to talk to police officers who may be investigating you or may be interested in you with regard to some crime. Even if that crime involves a speeding ticket, it is always best to politely but firmly refuse to answer any questions. That is your right under the Constitution. That's why we have a Constitution, and you should exercise that right. If you are being investigated by a police officer or by an agency, feel free to contact me at the information below. It'll be a free consultation, and I'd be happy to help. Thank you very much.